Running backs still matter in fantasy football, regardless of what format or point system you may use. You may play best ball or redraft or dynasty or all the above, like some of us. You may play full PPR leagues, half PPR, standard leagues, whatever format you play fantasy football. Running backs are extremely valuable and still have a ton of weight in determining whether your team succeeds or not. And a little over a month ago, we went over our dynasty tier rankings. Today, we are going into our redraft top 20 rankings according to our 2024 draft guide and placing these top 20 running backs into tiers. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. S tier, Christian McCaffrey, 101. Need I say more? I mean, that's why say many word when short word do trick. That is exactly what it comes to for CMC. On to the A tier. Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, and Jonathan Taylor. First with Brees Hall, we know he's coming off a massive receiving year where he finished first in receptions and targets and receiving yards. And now with Aaron Rodgers under center, there should be more good coming from Brees Hall because this team will be able to get the ball downfield. They'll be able to score more points. That's only going to help Brees Hall in fantasy football. He could be, I would argue, should be a top 5 pick this year because I think by season's end, we will be talking about Brees Hall as a top 3 pick next year. Bijan Robinson is next. He's the running back 3 across the board for us. And we've all heard and seen the clips of Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, talk about how much they want to establish the run on offense and how much they love Bijan Robinson as a person and as a talent. This offense will go through Bijan Robinson. That's all that really needs to be said about this Falcons offense and Bijan Robinson. There's only, and with his talent, I should say, why can't Bijan Robinson be the overall running back 1? That's why he goes as the running back 3. That's why we have him ranked as the running back 3 because he does have that kind of upside. Next is Jameer Gibbs. He's my running back 4, Lucas's running back 4, and Cameron's running back 5. And there was a clear shift in this Lions backfield in the second half of their season where Gibbs started becoming the leader in snaps and finished as the running back 5 the second half of the season. Now, David Montgomery is still in Detroit and he is still going to get valuable touches. So that does impact Gibbs in some ways. But with his receiving upside and all the news that has been coming out about his route running ability just getting better, it really should have no impact on him because he's going to get valuable touches in other ways that David Montgomery won't. Last guy in this A tier is Jonathan Taylor. He's Cam's running back 4, my running back 5, Lucas's running back 5. Jonathan Taylor will still get his in this offense. Don't need to worry about Anthony Richardson scarfing, goal line touches or anything like that. Jonathan Taylor will still get his. This offense should be one of, if not the highest rushing scoring team in the league with him and Anthony Richardson. So do not worry about Jonathan Taylor. He will be just fine in this offense. Let's move on to the B tier. We got Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, and Travis Etienne. And first with Saquon Barkley, he could very easily be in the A tier as well. He's Cam and Lucas's running back 6. He's my running back 9. But if I were to give Saquon one more additional rushing touchdown, he's then my running back 6, and then he's then in the A tier as well. So you can make the case for A tier or this spot, very high in the B tier. Kellen Moore offenses typically yield good running back finishes. We saw Ezekiel Elliott finish as a top 10 running back in 3 of 4 seasons in Dallas with Kellen Moore as the play caller. And we saw Tony Pollard in 2022 finish as a top 10 running back with Kellen Moore. Saquon is pretty similar to Jonathan Taylor in the sense that they are elite talents with rushing and mobile quarterbacks. They will still get theirs. But the reason for me why I would put Saquon in this B tier is because Saquon has AJ Brown and Devontae Smith in this offense as well, versus Jonathan Taylor, who just has Michael Pittman Jr. and then Josh Downs, AD Mitchell in his offense. Moving on to Devon Achane, he's my running back 6, Cam's running back 9, and Lucas's running back 12. And his rookie season was crazy productive and efficient. First in yards per touch was 7.7. He was first in breakaway run rate with, or I should say, at 12.6%, and second in true yards per carry was 6.6. Expect to see some regression here. Okay. We are not going to see 6 yards per carry. We're not going to see 7 yards per touch. But what we are expecting is that he's going to get an uptick in touches and volume, and that can counteract and that can that can lessen the impact of regression. So for Devon Achane, do not worry about him. He's going to ultimately finish as the 1A in this offense. Yes, Raheem Mostert will still play a role, but Devon Achane will be the clear best back in this backfield by season's end. Isaiah Pacheco is next. He's my running back 8. Lucas is running back 8. Cam's running back 12. And after Isaiah Pacheco returned from his injury from what was that, week 13, 14, 15, whatever that time range was. Isaiah Pacheco was a running back 5 in expected fantasy points per game. And expected fantasy points are just the fantasy points that you would expect a player to score based on how they were utilized in their offense. So first, that's a very good sign for Isaiah Pacheco. But then the other thing is that we saw an uptick in receiving work. And that was the question about Pacheco, was like, how much receiving work was he really going to get? Over half of his season total came in the second half of the season when this offense started to play their best ball. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a focal point of this offense. It would be foolish of them to go away from it, because ultimately that's what helped them win a Super Bowl. After being very inconsistent and being not so Kansas City Chiefs like in the regular season, they turned to Isaiah Pacheco, and that's how they got to another Super Bowl victory. So expect some more good things from Isaiah Pacheco this year. James Cook is next. My running back 10, Cam's running back 10, and Lucas's running back 9. The Bills have the second most vacated targets in the league with 317 targets. Running backs typically get an uptick in receiving work with larger amounts of vacated targets. So for Cook, who finished with 44 receptions last year, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he finishes somewhere in the 50s and maybe pushes, closer to 60. And with the rushing workload that he could get, Cook, he could push top 7 by the end of the season. And then we're talking about James Cook as a bell cow back, depending on how next offseason plays out. The last guy then in the B tier is Travis Etienne. He's Cam's running back 7, Lucas's running back 10, my running back 12. And last year was pretty impressive for Etienne considering his situation, right? He's got a bottom 12 pass blocking and the second worst run blocking graded offensive line according to PFF in front of him. And then he's got injuries all over the offense with Christian Kirk, with Zay Jones, and Trevor Lawrence himself battling injuries throughout the year. We're probably not going to see 325 total touches again from Travis Etienne, but if he still gets 280, let's say, he'll still be a very productive back in fantasy. Moving on to the C tier, and this is the tier that I like to call the player take tier, because all of these guys, one of us fellas are in on compared to the other two. First, we're going to start with Alvin Kamara. This is Lucas's guy, and I wish I had him on so he could do Alvin Kamara justice, but Lucas has him as his running back 7. He's my running back 11, and Cam's running back 14. Running back 3 in expected fantasy points per game after returning from his 3-game suspension at the beginning of the season. Okay. That tells you really everything you need to know about Alvin Kamara, that he is a staple of this Saints offense. You look at his career, he's finished outside the top 10 in points per game just once in his career. And now still the running back 1 at 29 years old, in the second best pass catcher, in this offense. People may be scared off by Kendre Miller, but if he gets involved in any capacity with this offense, it's going to be towards the end of the season when the Saints are out of playoff contention. No need to worry about Kendre Miller for the first 8 games, let's say, of the year. And then maybe at that point we discuss about moving him or anything like that. But as things stand right now, this guy, Alvin Kamara, there is really no reason to doubt him in any capacity. Next is Kyren Williams. He is my player take in this tier. He's my running back 7. He's Cam's running back 13. Lucas's running back 14. And I am not afraid of the Blake Corum addition really at all, because I know that when Sean McVay trusts a guy, he fully leans on that running back. Yes, he has said in other words that he's essentially got 2 Kyren Williams now in that running back room, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to force Blake Corum into the game plan and into his offensive plans. The only thing that really would change the outlook for me when it comes to Kyren Williams is if he enters training camp with that foot issue that forced him to miss OTAs. If he does, then things are completely different. But as of right now, I'm not really expecting that injury to linger at all. So expect him to be the clear running back 1 in this Rams offense. And we saw what happened in that role last year, where he was the running back 2 in fantasy points per game on the year. Next is Derrick Henry. This is Cam's guy here. He is Cam's running back 8, Lucas's running back 13, my running back 13. Derrick Henry is 30 years old now, but he is arguably in the best situation of his career now in Baltimore. And while Todd Monken got the most efficient passer out of Lamar Jackson last year, this Baltimore team still led the league in rushing attempts. So they still ran the ball a ton. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, even, they had a combined 330 carries. Gus Edwards is now over in LA with the Chargers. Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, I don't see them having as big of a role in this offense because Derrick Henry is now in town. So Henry should have a monster workload in this offense. And if Gus Edwards can get 13 rushing touchdowns, imagine what Derrick Henry can get. He can easily get 11 or 12 touchdowns this year. Next is then Rachaad White, the last guy in this player take tier. And this one really isn't necessarily a player take. Rachaad White is in this tier just because I have him as my running back 16 and Lucas and Kim have him as their running back 11. And I'm probably too low on Rachaad White at this moment. He's not the most efficient back. I get it. But what counteracts that is volume, and that's what he got last year. That's what he should get again this year. It won't be pretty. You won't want to watch his performances or anything like that, but you're going to take whatever he gets you in a given week in fantasy. Moving on to the D tier here, we got Josh Jacobs, we got Aaron Jones, and we've got Joe Mixon. First with Josh Jacobs. He's my running back 16, Cam's running back 16, and Lucas's running back 15. And we've talked about Jacobs quite a bit already this summer. And here's what it really boils down to. This offense utilizes multiple backs, and they haven't had a rusher score more than 7 touchdowns since 2020. Now, could that all change because you have a player like Josh Jacobs in your backfield? I think there's a possibility of that. So he will get his carries, right? That's the reason why they brought him in, to be a workhorse rusher, I will call it. I'll say it like that. But the receiving work won't be great because they did also draft Marshawn Lloyd in the 3rd round of the draft, and they want to get him involved in as many ways as possible. I'm not expecting crazy touchdown numbers. I shouldn't say. I haven't sat out for 11 touchdowns, so maybe that is a bit crazy. But the other guys, 7, 8 touchdowns, and they have him a little bit higher in the receiving work. And that's where I kind of differ. I've got more touchdowns for him, but I don't have nearly as good receiving work for him statted out. Next is Aaron Jones, then Cam's running back 15, Lucas's running back 16, my running back 18. And the question that we have to ask about Aaron Jones is, have the wheels started to fall off, right? He is 29 years old, but he is coming off of a pretty efficient year last year still, averaging 4.6 yards per carry in 11 games, and he'll give you somewhere between 30 and 40 receptions. So maybe the efficiency is starting to kind of dip a little bit, but he was still pretty involved and he was still getting touches when he was active. And being in Minnesota too, now as the lead back, there is some decent touchdown potential for him because, again, the only other competition he's really got is Ty Chandler. And I think when they get closer to the goal line in those kind of scenarios, you're going to see Aaron Jones on the field. But we shouldn't get too excited about this one, though, because we do expect Minnesota to take a step back in scoring just with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold playing under center for this year. And the last guy then in this tier, Joe Mixon, he's my running back 14, Cam's running back 17, and Lucas's running back 20. And to me, Joe Mixon is the enigma of the entire tier ranking because of how his career has gone so far. He hasn't played 100 games yet in his career and still has had over 1,500 total carries and 6,400 rushing yards. That's insane for a guy that hasn't even hit 100 games yet. And since 2018, Joe Mixon has been top 10 in opportunity share. So he's been massively involved in his entire career pretty much. There's not a lot of tread left on the tire because, again, we are going into year 7 with over 1,500 carries. But being in Houston, you know that he's going to have a decent sized workload ahead of him because there is no one else. Like, we all thought Dameon Pierce was going to be something last year. He didn't really turn out to be that. So it is Joe Mixon's backfield at this point, and he will have plenty of scoring opportunities in this high scoring Houston offense. Moving on to this E tier then, where I will call this the competitive backfield tier, right? You've got Kenneth Walker, you've got Jalen Warren, and James Conner. So first with Kenneth Walker, he's my running back 17, Lucas's running back 17, and Cam's running back 25. We all know that this Seattle offense will be a little more pass friendly with Ryan Grubb now calling the shots. But what exactly does that mean for the running backs? That's the question everyone's asking at this point. And then you add in Zach Charbonnet into this whole equation, I'll call it. It's just, it's incredibly murky for Kenneth Walker, and it's tough to figure out. But here's what we do know about Kenneth Walker: that he's a dynamic rusher who will always put up high numbers in missed tackles forced and will get at least 200 carries. So you have big play potential with a guy like Kenneth Walker with the volume that he should get still in this Seattle offense. Yes, his receiving upside is capped because you've got the wide receivers, you've got DK, you've got JSN, you've got Tyler Lockett, and you have Zach Charbonnet in the backfield as well. So you're only really getting just the rushing part. You're only getting the rushing production from Kenneth Walker. But again, he's going to get over 200 carries, and he's a threat for a big play at any time because of how dynamic of a rusher he is. It's just hard to envision him as a top 15 guy with this situation. So that's why he's our consensus running back 18. Jalen Warren is next, our consensus running back 19. Lucas is running back 18, Cam's running back 19, my running back 24, and Arthur Smith is in town, and we know his history with running the football, so that just adds a general excitement to everything. And between him and Najee, we know that Jalen Warren is likely going to get the majority of the receiving work. It's just going to be the lack of like the entirety of the backfield that is going to limit Jalen Warren. That's why I've got him pretty low in my rankings compared to the other two guys. Uh, Very similar to Kenneth Walker in the sense that the top 15 upside, I don't really necessarily see just yet. The last guy then is James Conner. He's my running back 19, Cam's running back 23, and Lucas's running back 26. Last year, James Conner in his age 28 season, he was the running back 13 in fantasy points per game. A pretty good year for a guy that is going, is 28 years old. And so now this year, 29 years old, and he has never played a full season in his career and has had no more than 215 carries in a single season, right? So we have not gotten the monster workload that we've kind of hoped for during his career, and he hasn't stayed healthy for the majority of his career. On top of all of that, he was on pace for his lowest receiving workload since 2020, and now we have Trey Benson in the mix. So James Conner seems to be a prime candidate to eventually get replaced or get phased out of this offense by Trey Benson, as we get closer and closer towards the end of the season. But when it comes to at least the first half of the season, I'm expecting James Conner to still be a focal point of that Cardinals offense. He's going to get a lot of carries. He's going to find himself in a lot of scoring opportunities too, closer to the goal line, because we know that he can capitalize on those chances. So that is our top 20 running back tier rankings, as you can see on the screen there. Christian McCaffrey, S tier, Bijan and Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, JT in the A tier. We've got Saquon Barkley, who could also be in the A tier, but he starts off the B tier. Devon Achane, Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, and Travis Etienne in the B tier. C tier, the player take tier. We've got Alvin Kamara, Kyler Williams, Derrick Henry, and Rashad White. In the D tier, we got Josh Jacobs, we got Aaron Jones, and Joe Mixon. And then in the E tier of our competitive backfields tier, we got Kenneth Walker, Jalen Warren, and James Conner. If you want to see our top 20 running backs in all of their statted out projections, and as well as really 250 other players as well from each fella, and as well as our consensus rankings on all these positions, check out fellasdraftguide.com. We will be releasing updates every week. We will be releasing risk and reward metrics. We will talk about really all of these players throughout the entirety of the summer. We will have player videos as well on all of them. So you do not want to miss out on that. If you want to dominate your drafts, fellasdraftguide.com. Tomorrow we will be back talking about risk and reward. We'll be talking about players that may not be worth the risk, or may be worth the risk because the upside is so good and well worth investing in. Next week, then we will be back with our top 20 wide receivers and top 15 tight end tier rankings. So you don't want to miss those. So make sure you're subscribed. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Who's too low? Who's too high? Heck, even give us your consensus rankings of your top 20 running backs as well in the comments. And so until next time, the next podcast episode coming out tomorrow again, and then until the next YouTube video where we're going over our wide receivers, stay safe, stay healthy. Just to quote our fearless leader in Lucas. Hope you all do well, and we'll talk to you soon. Deuces.